Welcome to the Connection is the Medicine podcast. I'm your host, Eden Shante. Today I welcome trauma therapist Tyler Stableford. His background includes internal family systems, coherence therapy, and psychedelic-assisted therapy, to name a few areas of his expertise. Tyler is also an Emmy Award-winning director, filmmaker, and adventure photographer. Join us as we explore the nexus of therapy, science, spirituality, and healing. Without further ado, let's dive right into the show. Connection is the medicine. Welcome, Tyler.
Good to be with you, Eden. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. How about if we begin with you sharing your intention for today?
Sure. Well, thanks very much first for having me here. I think my intention is pretty simple. I've learned a lot of wisdom from you and think, a lot of the teachers here at True Nature and obviously others in our community. For our time together, my intention is to hopefully engage our listeners, share wisdom. I think we all share with each other. If I'm holding some wisdom that can benefit others, great. Hope I can be a conduit for that. And also just to connect with you and have a nice time chatting. I always enjoy our talks.
I wanted to gather with you because when I come into town to Carbondale, Colorado from Costa Rica, we often get together and we have a hot beverage and we talk about consciousness and therapy and healing and all kinds of wonderful things. And I love the work that you're doing in the world. And so I wanted to bring you on so that we could connect. I could hold space. We can hold space for each other to allow the wisdom that needs to come through as you shared, and that it may benefit the greater whole. So I'm really honored to sit with you, my good friend from many years of working and being together in men's group, in the Sweat Lodge, and other experiences. So I'm very grateful to be with you, Tyler.
Thank you. I am too, Eden. All right.
So, Tyler, how about an exercise of connection? One of the things that we're doing on this podcast is allowing the guests to come in and share an exercise that'll allow you and I to deepen, because we're wanting to not only share stories, real life stories of connection on this podcast, but also how can we model connection to ourselves and each other as a part of that process. Yes. And so I'd love for you to share an exercise that'll help us to connect and also our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. So here's a relatively simple one of a light breathing exercise. And my intention for what I find helpful is as we do this, we're actually not trying to push anything away or attain a new state, that we may be on a destination that takes us to what we call a more likable or favorable state, but that's not the goal. It's just to be here with what is and to connect to whatever's inside us at this time, which can be challenging at times, but it's a good practice.
I have a question
Yeah.
already. So you said something really important right there, and that is this concept of not trying to attain a different state, but how can we fully accept and connect with what's here? Can you just briefly share, before we dive into that, why that's important?
In a nutshell, there is some value to escapism or now and then, absolutely at times. But when we're tuning in to what's here, I think it's better to gather the raw data of what's in our system so we can clearly work with it rather than try to run away from it or smoke screen it.
Okay, so it's welcoming what's here so that we can use that information.
Yes.
In a positive way.
Yes, yeah, a wise way is how we want to work with what's in our system. But if we have the noise filter on, the distraction filter, we're unlikely to find out what's in our system and what needs attention.
And what is your experience of giving attention to what's needed and how that benefits us?
That is a great question. Can we save it for my work as a therapist?
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect. Let's dive in. Thank you. Way to go.
Okay. Because that would take us on a long and deep rabbit hole.
Great.
And a good one. Yes. We'll go rabbit hunting a little later.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. So welcome in. So this is a simple exercise that I hope is modelable for anybody to try. And what we're going to do is light and slow and long breathing. And to simply breathe in and out through our nose. We're not trying to overfill our breath or take shallow breaths. I want to keep this relatively simple, so just do what feels natural. And if you find that, oh, my breathing has been shallow, great, notice that. Maybe breathe in a little bit. And as you breathe in, we'll add a step 2 to it. Envision the breath coming in through your nose, into your chest, and into the base of your belly. So we'll allow our base of our belly to expand and contract. Envision that as the bellows. And step 3 is as we breathe in and out, light and slow and long, it's just envision the breath as a supporting field, right? A supporting life breath coming in through the nose, into the chest, lungs, heart, into the base of the belly, and envision that, scientifically life-supporting force, then swirling through your body. This is a process of allowing. It's not a process of controlling or managing. So what we're doing is allowing breath to come in light, slow, and long, and noticing it. Nose, chest, belly, and then exhale, allowing that life-supporting breath to swirl. And this process can sometimes be very relaxing, and sometimes as we begin to turn off our distraction filter to the world, we can feel less relaxed. We may feel anxiety. To-do lists may come up. That's okay. Notice them. Return to focus on the breath. That is mindfulness. Is noticing what's here and gently returning our intention to focus on the breath, in and out. This simple practice is bringing intention, direction, positive motivation, positive direction to our lives. We don't have to grab the reins too hard or steer the ship, 180 degrees off. We just focus on our breath, light and slow and long. And so we'll pause there, and that's a good stopping point. We can add different layers to it, of course, but as a general intro, I find that's an easy one to replicate. And you can do this for 30 seconds as you pull up in a car, before a meeting. It can be helpful if we're, workaday workers before we get home, pull up to the driveway or on your bike. Do this for 30 seconds. And in this process, you can also sometimes, allow the workday to let go before we return home. That can be very powerful.
Thank you, Tyler.
You're welcome.
So helpful to take these moments throughout the day when the doing engine gets spinning pretty fast, and take these moments to slow down and connect, even if it's, like you said, for just a short time. So I already feel better.
Yeah, great. Yeah, feel connected here too.
Well, my first question for you is that as I've known you, you've always been a dedicated practitioner. You've been interested in men's work. You've been interested in therapy, meditation, reading about spirituality, a variety of paths. What encourages you, or what within you calls to explore this process of self-inquiry and cultivating self-awareness? Why do you do it? And how has it positively impacted your life?
I think at a most basic level, one is if I, it's not like I have I want to do, spiritual or personal insight for X or Y. I just think I'm naturally drawn to it. But when I think about it, why do I love it? For me, it comes to the basic question of, that any of us can ask here, who am I really? Who am I really? And then, if you want to have fun with it, what am I doing here? What are we doing here? And it's the question that will lead you very deeply, not the answer. I can positively say I have not found the answer. I've found an answer many, many times. Turns out it wasn't the full answer. It just goes deeper. So even as an example, for listeners, okay, who or what is looking through these eyes? Through my eyes, ask yourself that. Sit with the question. Don't go with the first answer. Allow it to come. Okay, what else? What else could possibly be driving this that's looking through my eyes? So that's at its basic. And for me, it's both we'll call it, scientific, but spirituality, I believe we want to marry with science, which I believe should be curiosity. I think we have a bounds of we'll call it a culturally bigoted scientific inquiry, as we know, that's been very favored toward, we'll call it, white Western, Judeo-Christian lens, which is a fine lens. It's just an exclusive lens that clearly, as we've seen even in the scientific community, has excluded brown-skinned cultures and indigenous wisdom. And there's a heck of a lot of wisdom there that now, we'll call it, Western science has affirmed, from Amazonian traditions, yogic traditions, Vedantic traditions, indigenous traditions of spirituality. Oh, what is our connection to ourselves, to nature, to consciousness? So that's been my passion of exploring.
And you have found that, just to reaffirm what you're sharing or repeat it, that it's the asking of the question that you have found to be most beneficial to you, not necessarily the answers that are coming. And that you've noticed that those answers over time have been evolving for you.
Yes. I think if I can share any nuggets of wisdom, it's the quality of our devotion to the learning, to the opening, rather than the finding and standing on one rock and saying, this is it. That leads our life to really wild adventures. I mean, very, very fun adventures of, intellectually of, okay, yeah, who are we, really? How is it, how is it that our DNA works? I mean, to go into biology, and where did DNA come from? And what sustains it? How are we connected to everything? Quite literally, everything. Fascinating inquiries, and that's where it's led me. I think I'm just interested, okay, it's almost as if I was in a video game, there's some worthwhileness of looking at it, like, okay, if we are in a headset, we're in a video game here, we have our certain lens as human beings, different than the lens that a bumblebee or a worm or a deer has. Can I zoom out and look at that? Okay. How did I put this headset on? And why do I have this lens? And what else is there? Like, what is creating this lens? Who or what created this lens or this, call it video game? Which is this fascinating inquiry. And for me, I think the benefit of it is, I think for anybody generally, I can't say 100%, but it really deepens our connection to everything. To humans, it's deepened my connection to every single thing that is human and also non-human. It has opened more wonder. I mean, I'm just filled with unspeakable wonder of, what this miracle of this, so-called creation is. So that's what it's done for me.
Wow. So many pathways that are just popcorning up within me as I listen to you. One is this spirit of inquiry and this humility that comes with us living in the great mystery. Mm-hmm. And not having all the answers, but being willing to ask the questions, and the beauty of that, and how that's such an important part of the spiritual path. Mm-hmm. Another thing that comes up within me is, I loved what you said about science. Mm-hmm. There's the heart and this fire of spirituality and creation in all religions. But yet humanity tends to put a lot of egoic dogma on top of religions, and you've got to kind of work through that through the different spiritual paths to find that fire of consciousness, that light. And I loved what you said about science. It's almost like what you shared for me took the dogma out of science, because science has, for many people, become a new religion in a way. And what you're sharing is, well, you tell me again, because I loved what you shared. It was almost like, is it just the spirit of inquiry? Tell me your interpretation or perspective on what science is, because I really loved what you said.
Well, I think science can be many things. It can be defined however you want. What I'm trying to do is expand our embrace of science when we have, we'll call it the scientific method, which is, a great lens for doing science. But it has also been, we'll call it, as I said before, culturally bigoted, as though, yogic sciences or whatever they is, those weren't, real. They don't adhere to our Western lens of scientific method. In part, that's true, but it also it has been, as we've had this, we'll call it, colonial lens, as though these, quote, savages, as we've called them before or whatnot, don't know the difference between cause and effect. That's science. Oh, okay. Turns out when we do, well, just to use, yoga traditions, turns out that's now evidence-based for trauma therapy. And it's been modeled. You can study, brain imageries and MRIs and these things. And so now we embrace it. Whereas, 20, 30 years ago, like Professor Harry Benson at Harvard would bring in the relaxation response, some time ago, he'd be laughed out of the hallways of Harvard. And, even their medical tradition took decades, it's only recent decades that saw the correlation between stress and medical, physical well-being. For thousands of years, this was a known fact in yogic, Vedantic traditions, Ayurvedic. But we've had a culturally bigoted lens in our adherence to the scientific method of having to, prove things in a certain way has blinded us a bit. Now, I'm all for scientific method, believe me. I'm just saying that we have to recognize that this is the meta view. It's just one lens. It's a great one. But we're very narrow and we're not allowing great wisdom, great healing. And in the case of our, very important medical health, we weren't allowing good medical wisdom to come in because of our biases decades ago. And we still have that. I see that as a therapist all the time, where there's deep knowledge that is not used by our medical traditions. It's evidence-based. It just takes a while to filter through the biases.
And so you were a filmmaker for many years and photographer, award-winning. And what led you to transition from that lifestyle into therapy, becoming a therapist, and then specializing as a trauma therapist?
So I moved to Carbondale in the 1900s, as I like to tell my kids.
That's funny. That's good.
In the previous century, yes. 1997.
Last century. That's a long time ago,
A long time
man.
ago. And I worked as an editor for Climbing Magazine and then Rock and Ice Magazine. It was very much about storytelling and also, connecting to the human spirit, in the mountains and the outdoors. I moved into photography and filmmaking independently. And always my guiding principle for that was, how can I capture, in a lot of ways, the human spirit and connect to my subject? So my challenge for me before each, film or photo shoot, we'll call it my intention or my prayers. Okay, may I really do my best job through the lens, through this paintbrush, we'll call it, that I'm holding, this camera. It's my artistic tool. How can I really connect, capture, and celebrate the human spirit of this individual group of people before me? And it wasn't that I was always, getting perfection, but again, just like that inquiry I put for spirituality, how can it connect most deeply to these people in front of me, led me on a fun path. And then now I'm 50 now, so maybe around age 45 or so, I think maybe just, becoming older, my beard getting gray and whatnot, just turned to be much more interested in connecting really, really deeply to people. I had done my own deep therapy and trauma healing and things, and just found such tremendous growth and such joy in my life, such rich connections to people that, just joyful connections, and to being just walking on this earth. A large part of that, not all of it, but a large part of that had come through just liberating myself through good therapy, and also many other positive influences, friends, loved ones. So I think I wanted to share that and just be in that space as a professional full time.
And so tell me about your work with people in working with trauma. And maybe first you can begin by defining trauma.
Yeah.
And then after you define it, what has it been like to take people into the deep aspect of their trauma, the dark side of their trauma? And how have you seen that benefit people by meeting that and working with it? How does that create healing?
So just as a brief overview, I'm now a licensed professional counselor, so psychotherapist here in Carbondale. And it's wonderful to have my feet firmly planted here in Carbondale. As a filmmaker, I was, there's very few jobs that I would do here in the Valley. Almost all of them were, a couple of plane trips away and such. So wonderful to be here in my community. And I work as a psychotherapist. I'm primarily focused, my fascination or my, passion is on trauma therapy. I work with teens, I work with adults, I work with couples as well. And I work with youth offenders through Youth Zone. I work with crime victims through the district attorney's office and the courts here in Glenwood Springs through crime victim compensation funds. I work with victims of often violent crimes. And I work as an in-house therapist at Stepping Stones Youth Center, where their executive director, Kyle Crawley, has a vision to provide free mental health counseling for any teens who want it. So that's very powerful work. So, together we're joining hands on trying to enhance access to mental health care. I think it's, vitally important for our well-being.
Beautiful.
So your question about, how would we define trauma? So, right, trauma has the feeling when we think of, the trauma ward at the hospital, you got hit with some big blunt object or got in a car accident, or we think it had to have to do with, some type of physical or sexual assault. I want to widen the lens just for therapeutic sake, and we'll define trauma. This is through the lens of one of my training modalities, is an overwhelming emotional experience experienced in a state of aloneness. So if we were bullied on the bus in 6th grade, and I can promise you none of us got through middle school or even a decent family without some form of, quote, trauma, which is feeling an overwhelming emotional experience experienced in a state of aloneness, where we had to do an often subconscious adaptation to deal with it. I mean, just, for me, example, sitting on the bus in 6th grade and some, big, humongous guy, a couple of rows back would lean forward and, slap my head on the bus, just as a brass tacks example. Most of us in that situation, we have to just cower, or we have to fight, but that has its own, trauma as well of engaging, in a conflict and what we're probably going to lose with the big bully. So what I do as a therapist and what's, evidence-based.
So before you share what
Please.
you do, in your definition,
Thanks.
trauma doesn't necessarily have to be, like you said, some massive explosion of an experience. There can be smaller, like you mentioned on the bus, and that would also be considered trauma. So trauma has a big spectrum from maybe smaller experiences that required some type of adaptation or coping to larger experiences which may require more.
Yes. Yeah. Let me give one other example if helpful, just so we can see what we're working with. Like, for example, let's just say we were young and you're playing in the front lawn and a neighbor's dog walks by and, bites you or scratches you. Okay. And you go into the house, you're crying. And your mom says, stop crying. It's just boo-boo the neighbor's dog or whatever it is. But you're 4 years old. It was scary. The dog came, bit you, they've got a scratch, some blood. Trauma is never, this is now the lens of Dr. Gabor Mate, a trauma expert. Trauma is never about what happened to you. It's about what happened to you as a result of what happened to you. So the dog bite is one thing. Now, what generally happens in family systems that I work with as a therapist to help, correct, you go in the house and let's just say mom says, stop crying. She's overwhelmed with whatever it is, on the phone or on an important call. Quiet down. You've just come as a child with, one of the most heightened, difficult experiences that you've had in recent, weeks, months, or years, whatever. Scary dogs bitten you. Or your dad comes, and says, why'd that dog do that? And he gets angry and he goes and he yells at the neighbor. Or then the parents are in conflict because neither of them like their response to the other. You as a child have not had your emotional needs met. So subconsciously, our nervous system is very wise. It has to do some type of adaptation which says, oh gosh, when I'm injured or when I'm hurt, I must never cry, or I must never share my wounds because my dad will get really angry. I'm going to take it inside from now on. That's just a very simple example of how it works. And our nervous system learns to adapt to our tribe. Very adaptive. It must keep the peace in the tribe. You know, evolutionarily, we have to stay attached to the tribe. We quite literally would get left behind.
So we tend to gravitate towards appeasing the system, the constellation.
Yes, attaching to the tribe, whatever that is.
And
in our
in
early
the
life.
process, we can abandon ourselves.
Yes, and we have to, because attachment to the tribe, food, clothing, shelter, and the approval of the tribe, whether that's, early life, we're in diapers or we're 5 years old in our homes, or as we grow up, our 7th grade friends, very, very important. Our, 10th grade friends, that tribe is vital. So yes, we sacrifice part of ourselves or we suppress, repress important emotions to stay attached. Now that's evolutionary, A+, good job. Stuck with the tribe.
So it's a matter of survival, because the tribe creates safety.
Yes, and it was necessary for in times of hardship in our evolution as human beings, under times of deficit and warring tribes and whatnot. You have to stay attached to your tribe. You have to stay connected. We're having a podcast about connection. It's vital. So what I would do as a therapist is to recognize that adaptation was perfectly normal and right at the time, and it was largely subconscious. No child said, I must stop crying or not tell my mom or my dad about the dog bite because they don't like it. It's just a subconscious learning. Oof. Okay, I'm gonna take it inside next time I get a scratch or a bite.
Or a lot of people tend to, when trauma happens, maybe blame themselves for it.
Correct. If mom and dad are fighting, the boy who got bit by the dog cannot help but think, and this has been modeled by Bruce Perry, child psychiatrist, wonderful researcher. The child believes they are the problem, they are the reason that mom and dad are now, arguing after the dog bite. Yeah. I am the problem in my family. Okay. Again, evolutionarily adaptive, stay attached to the tribe at all costs. However, this becomes into my working theory, right? We get to live, the average lifespan is in the 80s these days. We get to live quite literally, over twice as long as we used to back in our days. And what I see in working with adults, we have the opportunity to update our software, to live a more joyful life. It's not that we can't, fulfill biological's evolution's need of, living, reproducing, having kids, and doing that. Great, we can check that box even with trauma. Great. But I think what's more fun, what I offer as a therapist, and what many therapists offer, is better life. Something more fun than the adaptations we had to make in childhood.
And in your work with people, briefly, you have a process of bringing awareness to the adaptation. How does that then, because some of those can become pretty hardwired software.
Yes.
How do you loosen that, create the neuroplasticity for someone to create a new behavior pattern when that trigger arises, let's say?
Yeah, great question. So, well, first of all, for better or worse, the good news is therapy is for those who want help, not for those who need it. So it sometimes makes my job easier, is that I'm not trying to save the world or change people or do anything for people that they don't want. So people can come in and say, whatever it is, I want help with my drinking, but I don't want help with my, whatever it is, porn use on my phone or whatever it is, or, different things. Okay, great. I'm not here to be the moral police or to pass judgment. I'm here to help you get more of what you want and less of what you don't want. My experience is, as we move toward wellness, even when we're well, our life generally turns toward positive intentions. We use less substances, we get along better with those around us, we have more joy, and we balance our work lives and our family lives. So that road generally leads toward Rome, even if we're just working with one aspect.
Now, what about in the court system? Because you're working in the court system. Sometimes when people make it into the court system, they've had pretty more maybe explosive experiences in their childhood that's led to a greater adaptive behavior.
Yes.
So in terms of this process, when the trauma is more significant, say a sexual abuse or something along that magnitude, what's the process of helping people in terms of creating that safety and allowing them to bring their witness, their awareness, the light, so to speak, to that trauma?
Yeah, great question. So again, going back to our early example, and then we can get into the brass tacks with this, is generally when we have what we call adverse childhood experiences or adverse earlier life experiences, which can include, assault at any age. Again, our nervous system compartmentalizes. It has to. We have to move forward. You don't have to survive and move. So it puts it in a little wrapper, in a little box, in a treasure chest.
Would that be in the subconscious?
Often, yes.
Okay.
So it can be many things.
Below our level of consciousness when we get older. That's what subconscious means.
It sure can. I work with many adults who cannot remember, certain years of their childhood. I work with many who, say, I don't know why I'm, so angry. I would like to be less, angry in my marriage or toward my kids or whatever it is, to my coworkers. So what we do in the fascinating neuroscience that's now been provided by the science of memory reconsolidation, and the co-founder of this Coherence therapy, Bruce Ecker, is a trainer of mine. So when you mention neuroplasticity, yes, what we need to do, need is a strong word, but if people would like to heal the roots rather than to do symptom management, with pills, whatever, alcohol, substances, numbing, and I include psychiatric pills as part of that. They are purely symptom management. I haven't met any, psychiatric medications that cure the root cause the way an antibiotic might cure your strep throat. 5 days.
Beautiful area to highlight. Thank you for highlighting.
Yeah, I want to be clear on that. You take antibiotics for 5 days or 10 days for strep throat, and adios strep throat. Generally, if you have the right match of antibiotic, it's gone. It's cured the root. Take an antidepressant, anti-anxiety, benzodiazepine for 5 days, 10 days. You have not begun to cure the root of your trauma or of your, adaptation, as we'll call it, very normal. So what we look to do in a nutshell, I'll make it very brief, but we have to take the safety and the time to do what we call, phase-oriented trauma therapy and go, and we actually re-experience even what's stored today in the present moment in our emotional brain, in our nervous system, not what we think about it, but what we are feeling. That's a remnant of the original hardship. Now again, let's use the example of the boy or girl being bitten by the dog in the front yard. And it was not the dog bite that was the trauma. It could be, I'll work with it, but it wasn't the teeth biting the arm. It was mom saying, shut up, I'm on a phone call, don't cry so loudly, or dad, going in a fury, getting in a ruckus with a neighbor. And then the child feeling that they're abandoned or they're the problem, and that now the parents are angry at him or her. Generally, that's the oh shit nervous system that's in the child thing that we need to feel, that then the adaptation comes and says, bury your emotions, kid. Okay. So what we need to go back is uncover the part that says, bury your emotions, kid. You've got to work with that, unfold that, ask it to step away so we can get to the feeling of, wow, I'm the reason mom and dad hate me or hate each other right now. I'm using child's language here. And we have to feel that disapproval, the loss of tribal connections, abandonment, call it a very feeling of aloneness. Neither mom nor dad came.
Now, I noticed that you're pointing to this part of your body from the neck to maybe the tailbone.
Yes.
Can you communicate why you're pointing like that?
Yeah. Again, coming back maybe to our beginnings, I'll call it our Western lens has generally favored the brain. We call it, put man in air quotes in our mind, our brain as this, place, this locus of dominion, and we have dominion over the earth and over animals and plants. Well, it turns out, and this is, again, crudely speaking, but our brain sits on top of a wildly intelligent nervous system and a DNA system and other things, just, to use certain examples, that's shared by all living creatures.
And neurology in the heart and neurology in the gut.
Correct. The brain, I like to think of it, this is not 100% true, but this falsehood helps us lead toward the truth, is the interpreter of our very wise nervous system. So if I want my clients to help heal what's here, we have to gather the raw data from the emotional brain, from our nervous system. For example, we're sitting right here, sitting in some seats comfortably, having a conversation. Our nervous system is sequencing DNA, breathing, doing respiration. We have 70 trillion cells that are all, doing their things, shedding. Billions of cells are dying and being born right now, in this time of our podcast as we'll speak here. Our brain registers none of it to our conscious mind. So what I'm guiding people to do is to begin to pay attention to the very wise nervous system and find what was stored there so we can unlock it, liberate it, and provide a really great software update for your life going forward. So to get back to that, we have to work with the container, the fog bank that said, don't touch that tough experience again. Mom and dad yelling at each other or at you when you had your dog bite. And then this is where the detective work, which is so fascinating, is my work as a psychotherapist, Eden. It's unique for every individual of what their, quote, trauma was. What happened to them as a result of what happened. Oh, I felt like I was the problem, that mom and dad were arguing, or I felt terrible for, even mentioning that I got bitten by a dog, or I will never, be the problem again in my household. So then we feel that terror, the pain of the dog bite, the abandonment of having your needs being met. You got the opposite of caregiving. You got, care rejection. And we fire that, and that creates a 5-hour window of neuroplasticity that we can then use memory reconsolidation techniques, which we can use with, EMDR therapy, internal family systems therapy, AEDP, any range of different ones that are evidence-based, to reconsolidate that memory and update the software so we're no longer operating from that pattern of abandonment, fear, or being the, problem.
Beautiful. What's the evidence that you've directly experienced from this work in your practice? Yeah,
so the fun thing is, as I train in these modalities, I train and we practice this on ourselves and dyads, as fellow therapists as well. So I get to experience it myself, I get to practice it, and then I see it, through hundreds and hundreds of hours of working with clients. I'll say two things. Just like being a good athlete, it requires a certain amount of rigor and willingness to be good, to do good self-help. So if any listeners want to do good self-help, just the same as, okay, if you want to be a good tennis player, or a good skier or whatever it is, or a good runner, there's going to be some discomfort, there's going to be some rigor if you want to get above, a D- level as an athlete. So therapy is no different. Therapy is for those who want to do the work for wellness, again, rather than looking for escapism or numbing coping mechanisms. I believe it's the best avenue, but it requires work.
And in this reprogramming process, thinking that it's probably unique to each person, like their nervous systems might align with one technique over another.
Yes.
And not only that, but there's a mysterious element, and I'd love for you to speak to this. Call it spirit, call it consciousness, God, whatever it is. Maybe spirit guides and angels that can also show up to support the process. So it's not just the person's willingness, I think personally, and I'm open to your opinion. It's not just the particular techniques that are being used, but there's also maybe something else that comes into the space.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, thanks. There almost always is. I remember training in internal family systems therapy, which is, a profound, I would call it revolutionary psychotherapy. It's evidence-based. And the heralded trauma psychiatrist Bessel van der Kolk, who wrote the award-winning book, The Body Keeps the Score, he called internal family systems therapy the single most effective therapy in existence today. And he's studied,
I think you're the fourth or fifth guest in a row that's mentioned IFS. So it's really pinging me. So once again, there's the trauma,
yes,
and then there's different techniques. Great. And then there's the invisible.
The invisible. So I was learning and training with Ann Cinco, a professor and an IFS, psychologist, therapist in Connecticut. And she did profound healing with one of our fellow therapists who had grown up with an eating disorder, had an eating disorder, and grown up in a family lineage of them. It was also paired with female abuse and such in the lineage. And I asked Ann after, that was profound healing. What else was going on behind the scenes, Ann? Because I know that this was more than just, we'll call it, talk therapy. I mean, obviously there's more than talk therapy, but she's like, oh yeah, I bring my guides in. I was like, guides, okay. Tell me about that. Because what I just saw happen there in healing in that space of 20 minutes was more profound than, anything I've seen demonstrated before. So she calls in guides who are available. And I said, okay, great. Well, why don't I try that too? And we'll see. So what I do in my therapy space is we create an invitation for any healing allies, known or unknown, to be welcome.
Great term.
Yeah.
Healing allies.
And this is also as part of my EMDR training, which is, again, is an evidence-based, trauma therapy. It's the one chosen by the Veterans Administration for trauma therapy for veterans. But we call in healing allies. And so what I also like to call in that works for a lot of people is the highest essence of some of our loved ones. And I work with a lot of people who've lost loved ones, close to them, or haven't had a chance to mend terms with family members or loved ones. So what I invite is the highest essence. And again, this is just words, hopefully pointing somehow toward the truth. However you want to envision it, is that essence of that person or that being that it was there maybe during life and is still here after death. Might have still been there before birth, who knows? Again, this is part of the mystery for me. I don't know. But we don't need to know to work with it. So I use the example of electricity. Quite literally, the math of electricity breaks down. Scientists have no idea what happens at below 10 to the minus 16th or 10 to the minus 32nd, centimeters as we get down in there. It's a mystery. Great. It's an entire mystery to me, even when I'm working with clients and we call in spirit guides, healing allies. But we don't need to know. Just like electricity, I can plug my toaster in and have some really nice toast with butter, honey this morning. In the same way, we can call in healing allies, and by golly, 8 or 9 times out of 10 for people it works. We've been bringing some really nice things. But it's a practice. Sometimes nothing comes, that's fine. It's the process of creating an invitation and opening to things beyond us. And again, scientifically, even as we sit here, there are things far beyond our knowing that are supporting our life and have contributed to our life and this life on earth. So we just open to that.
I love the way you talked about the healing allies. While we're on this subject, what is your understanding of the use that's becoming more popular of psychedelics in the therapeutic process?
Yeah.
How do they aid the process?
Right. So I am a trained, hold certificates in, psychedelic-assisted therapy. I use it with clients. And I'll say I was very excited about it, and I am excited about it, but my excitement has also been tempered as I've seen just, the use of this tool be misused in a lot of ways as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's like anything. It's like our hands, Eden. They can be used, to hold, to love. They can be used for incredible violence. Psychedelics are no different. I tell my clients it's often like a table saw if you're building a house. Table saw is awesome. It can frame your house. It can cut really precise angles. You can, frame your bottom floor, top floor of your house really rapidly. That table saw can also cut your hand off. And I know people who've lost digits with it. Psychedelics are no different. They're a tool that must be used very, skilled, very professionally, particularly when we're in the therapy space.
And so that's a great word to the wise about the importance of the intention that we have, how we use them. How do you see them benefiting us in terms of these helping allies, these healing allies, in terms of neuroplasticity? Yes. And how have you seen, used in the right way, benefits coming to your clients?
Yes. So I've seen the benefits, and I'll even say what I tell clients who are interested in considering psychedelic therapy is a couple of things. One, we're going to approach it in a rigorous way. And so if someone has come to me, with treatment-resistant symptoms, depression or anxiety or chronic pain or other things, or, amnesia from their childhood and, dysfunctional patterns carried forward, okay, great. We want to create a container that's going to hope to create a real breakthrough in your symptoms, not just a 10% symptom abatement. So we want to use psychedelics as a tool, like a table saw for building a house, that we will plug in, like the table saw, we'll use it at the right time, but it's not going to create the house for us. So I really tell people that, and that's kind of a downer for people. They're looking for the medicine, for the psychedelic to do the work, just as they're hoping that a antidepressant or anxiety will take away our hardship. Believe me, I love it too. I wish that there were pills that could take away my pain at different times too, but it doesn't work that way. The media is full of accounts of somehow where psychedelics somehow do miraculously take the pain away. Wild outliers. Outliers are not building our true database of things. Outliers are worth looking at in a data sample, but they don't inform our day-to-day work. I work with ketamine most frequently, in part because it can be used, in the space of, we'll call it, an hour-long journey with an hour or two of, on either side of preparation and therapy on the other side. But we want to use it in a rigorous way to, maybe 6 sessions within a space of a month or so with a deep wraparound services of therapy. And I tell my clients, we are going to go toward the pain. The healing for the pain is in the pain, and it's often unknown, or even you may know, what happened to you. But again, we're not rewriting the script of what happened to you. We're healing what your nervous system has carried. And that's where we're going. And at the outset, that often intimidates people or turns them off, because one of the great, we'll call it misbeliefs, but very adaptive parts of our nervous system, even when we've had trauma, is to say, this is too big to touch, just move on. This comes to our rugged individuals. We'll just put the plow back in the ground, keep moving forward, keep a stiff upper lip, keep going forward. It happened, let it go.
This whole, I'm not going there.
Yes. And most of it, 90% of that's subconscious. Yeah. And so it's my role as a therapist.
So what you're saying is we don't even know that we're not going there.
Correct. But when someone comes to me, I know that I'm working with a large, part of their system. If someone says, I really want to figure out, what happened in my childhood, why can't I remember from age 4 to age 12? So, okay, great. But I can bet you that the majority of your system right now doesn't want to remember what happened between age 4 to 12, or else you would. I mean, it remembers. It's not that you're dumb or that you lack the memory. It's that it's been packed away. Yeah. Certain events have been fog-banked.
And I don't know all of your experience with psychedelics, but I know that with certain plant medicines like iboga and ayahuasca, there's a lineage to these medicines, and they're often used with extremely experienced holders of the medicine. Yeah. What is your experience or knowledge of that importance of, as you said, there's so many people using all varieties of psychedelics, whether it's LSD, psilocybin, MDMA, ketamine, 5-MeO-DMT, iboga, ayahuasca. I guess what I want to share is that I have found these to be incredibly supportive in terms of releasing a lot of karmic baggage that has no longer served me, but also creating new awarenesses for me and expanding my perception of myself. So there's been great benefit, but I know in my own life, I've gone into them incredibly intentionally with coaching beforehand, coaching during, coaching after, whether it's therapy or someone just very experienced. And I tend to really do a lot of research to find the people who are serving and holding space for these experiences to have great experience, often attached to a lineage of great importance and significance, whether it's in West Africa with the Gabonese people with iboga, or down in Central and South America that go back many, many generations. Some of these tribes and people have been using these medicines for thousands of years.
Yes, yeah, over 5,000 years, so they found in some archaeological records in the Amazon. So yes, I agree. I'll put like one caveat, if I have one thing I could share with listeners, is be really, really careful if you're looking at psychedelic therapy or who you're doing it with. Really do your due diligence and try to ascertain what are the intentions of this person who is your psychedelic practitioner. And are they gaining any type of perceived power or importance from using these medicines?
Yes.
So I just want to set some very clear parameters that it's very important to work with a skilled practitioner who can help screen you and create the most beneficial outcomes for certain people. I don't talk about this frequently, but I have been studying in the ayahuasca tradition, well over a 5,000 year, like continuous wisdom tradition of healing, of using ayahuasca. And this applies to other things in the Native American use of peyote and other things, and Central American use of psilocybin. But specifically with ayahuasca for thousands of years as a healing medicine, and to allow both the person taking the medicine and also the healer to do powerful work together. So I'm fascinated by that, just to see what nuggets of wisdom I can bring just as a therapist. I do the vast majority of my work, again, even just with youth, adults, couples in great sobriety, but the techniques and the wisdom traditions, the healing methods can apply to us, just even as we're sitting here now. So that really inspires me. And also the use of the medicine and the ingestion of the ayahuasca and the profound wisdom and technology that's available in it is just mind-blowing. I'm at a loss for words. I don't even know how to describe what's possible with it, but the possibilities are very, very deep. And as I mentioned before, it's in large part has been our, call it colonial cultural bigotry that has blinded to us. And as we've seen with the Native Americans, we spent most of the hundreds of years of our white settlers on Earth trying to banish, expel, punish, and torture Native Americans who practiced their healing traditions or their indigenous wisdom and their spirituality. We're now slightly beginning to realize the error of our ways. And that's the same, with some of the South American traditions as well. So for me, it's been fascinating to have access to begin to learn these deep, medicinal healing properties of ayahuasca.
Who are some of the authors that you've explored that have really inspired you, that go into a deep dive about the technology and the levels of consciousness that are available to us on these journeys?
Yeah, I think Dr. Joe Tafur in the Phoenix area is a really good way in on this. He wrote a wonderful book called The Fellowship of the River. His family is of Colombian descent, and he has some ties and has done deep studies himself in the ayahuasca tradition. But he's a medical doctor, physician, and has spent years studying in his ancestral roots and with the Shipibo and others in Colombia, Peru area. And I can tell you from what he writes about in this book, The Fellowship of the River, the training tradition, the rigor of what these shamans go through. Yeah. Quite literally, it makes medical school look like high school. I would never in this lifetime sign up for the rigors of that training. I would sign up for med school just in terms of like the sheer like physical rigor of it, and the intellectual rigor of it. So what I'm trying to say is the rigor and the pillars of wisdom, and training that they've built on this is profound and it should be respected.
Yeah, I don't think that we as a culture have given the medicinal power and the wisdom of these cultures and these medicines their due. I really think that we're just beginning to open up to it. I mean, just in the United States, there's a few states now that it's legal to do psilocybin-assisted therapy, and Colorado is one of them, but I think there's only a couple in the country. Isn't that true?
Yes. And even in the therapy space and in my, initial trainings, it was, okay, we'll do therapy and we'll call it in a non-directive way. This was the training. Allow the client to ingest the medicine and go on their journey. And as we know in the indigenous tradition, it's like, no, heck no, we're going to direct the journey for the most rapid, effective, scientifically based healing. And so it's been fascinating to tap into that. Oh, we can direct the psychedelic journeys, and we can engage, the neuroplasticity and the trauma healing, and the opening to, to grace, to spirit, to joy, and, interweave these two.
And we can engage these allies.
Yes.
I mean, the allies that are available to us on these journeys is really profound.
It is profound, yeah. And it starts with, I think, just the willingness to create the invitation to be with them. Just like I do in a very sober space in my therapy office. Can we be open to, healing allies, known or unknown?
So I'd like to transition now to another topic of connection in your life. And you're a father, you've been a father, you're a husband. And I just want to ask you how being a husband, how being a father has impacted your life. And what are the things that you've learned about yourself? And there's probably many, but maybe you can share a few kernels of wisdom about your journey of being in family, because our intimate relationships have such an ability, just like the therapeutic setting, to support our healing and our awareness and our growth. So maybe you can touch on how they've helped facilitate your evolution as a human being.
Yeah, sure. I'm at what I consider just like a really wonderful time of being a father and husband. So I'm 50, and my wife Megan is 50 as well. Our kids are 19 and 17. So our daughter Annabelle's in her second year at college. Our son Sam's a senior here in high school. So we're in our, the final countdown before empty nest days, Eden. So we're in the final year, and my gosh, it creates such a precious finiteness in the game of life. Death is a great teacher of finiteness. Oh wow, okay. When we see people die, we realize that our time on earth is limited too. As I see our last, our second child about to go off to college in less than a year, I say, oh wow, it's the sand is slipping through the fingers of parenthood as I have known it. And I don't want to say that that's a loss. It is a loss of one thing. I'm just mentioning to you that it's just a very rich time. It's like, wow, good golly, this is amazing journey of life. I'll say as a couples counselor as well, I've trained deeply in couples counseling. I wish the wisdom that I've learned in the last 5 years, Eden, was taught in, grade school, high school, college, like mandatory classes. I don't know, not that I'm for regulation, but, like before marriage and type of things, because I was like, how did I have to wait until I was, 45, 50 to learn some of these pearls of wisdom that are just evidence-based and here in the psychology literature? And so to speak to that.
Yeah, can you name a few pearls, let's say? Because there's people who are, maybe just thinking about getting into a committed relationship or taking that commitment deeper into marriage. And of course, we know how difficult that journey is. So what pearls have you found that could potentially be of support to our listeners who are at different stages of this process? Yeah.
So again, this comes to like we'll call it spiritual growth or self-help growth. We'll call it the same of saying, who am I? Why am I attracted to this, man or woman, and why am I in conflict with them at times, with my loved ones? What we find is the majority of our perception of the world and our attachment systems is fully baked before we're age 5. It's just the way the human attachment system works. Good news is it's software, not hardware, and it can be rejiggered, to be updated. So it's helpful for people to know that this can be intimidating. Oh gosh, I got to go back and do, early childhood therapy to change myself. No, you don't have to do that. It can be helpful. It can be very healing, but I know that's time and labor intensive. One technique I have, and this is used in the internal family systems therapy method, is what we call the U-turn. So if I, or any of the listeners are being triggered by our loved one in front of us, our spouse or our kids, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, do a U-turn and say, oh, what is this situation bringing up in me? Okay, I'm feeling frustrated, I'm feeling angry or whatever it is. And we go, stay with the question, what's underneath that? Often we'll find I don't feel respected, I'm not being heard, I never get the type of whatever it is, reception that I want. Okay, what is this bringing up in me? This is the question. And that becomes...
And once again, you're pointing at the nervous system.
And pointing at the nervous system, because very often there's tension in our chest, or there's, a sinking in our gut, like, oh gosh, this isn't the right time to say something, or, I'm never heard, or if I say this, my, partner's gonna get angry, or, it's gonna ruin our camping weekend, and, whatever, if I bring this up now, because they don't deal with, when I bring this up, well, it's a sinking in the gut, I have to hold this, or whatever it is, okay? So this is the great practice, I think, that's been so valuable for me and has really helped, I would say, transform my life. I'll just speak, personally, it's been powerful. I wish, right, all of us in a relationship, I'm laughing. I wish that, my wife, my kids, or my friends would say and do exactly the things that I want them to do, and then my life would be fine, right? My coworkers behave just the right way. I don't stop wishing that in its own way at times, right? But I've gotten better at saying, oh, right, okay, what is this situation bringing up that's resonating, in me? Why am I upset? Generally, that's what I want to look for. Why am I feeling something other than connection, something other than, gratitude? Take a look and see. And I'm just offering that the lion's share comes from our, early view of the world and the way we think things, quote, should be.
And so can we take this U-turn in the moment when we're interacting with our family and we're triggered?
Yeah.
So walk us through that.
Brass tack example, I've grown up with 2 teenagers, and to come home, let's say, for day number 2, and there's still dishes in the sink and, things around the kitchen counters and things that, I'll just say, whether it's my wife and I, or just I have asked the kids to clean up. Come home day 2 and they're still not done, and the pile's grown bigger. I can feel triggers of anger. I'm like, good God, have I been put on this earth to just, get angry at my kids about these damn dishes or whatever it is? I'm giving an example, but this has happened in my life. We want to do 2 things at this point. One is the U-turn. What is this bringing up in me? I'm here to tell you, most likely, I would bet on this most of the time, this is bringing up feelings of being unappreciated or feelings of being unheard. And that goes back likely to early relationships in life. Right. We got to unhook from that first, because it turns out, lo and behold, teenage children, particularly around the age of 12, 13, 14, are not put on this earth to wash dishes or to care about whether or not their school books and, plates of bowls have been put away cleanly or dried and put back in the cupboard. Yeah. That's just not part of humanity.
Yeah.
Okay, so that becomes my work. That doesn't mean that we don't create, rigor or discipline in the household. But number 2, Eden, is ask yourself the question, what is it that I really want?
So the first is, what is this?
The U-turn.
The U-turn, and what is this?
What is this bringing up in me?
Okay, on an emotional level?
At an emotional level.
Sensation, emotion, and thought?
And thought, absolutely.
Okay,
it's all body, mind, spirit. Okay. I come home from a work day, dishes are still there, They're there in the morning. I told the kids before I left they better be done before I come home. They were there last night before they went to bed. Okay, damn it. Okay, what is this bringing up in me? Yeah. Here are some dishes in the sink. Right. Okay, great. They're just sitting there. They're inert objects. Yeah. Sitting in the kitchen, doing nothing. Oh, wow. They can sure stir up a lot of emotion.
Yeah, I can relate.
Yes. Okay. Great. And for some reason, you go to a friend's house and the same, plate on a similar spot in their counter doesn't stir up the same emotions. Okay. So we can agree that, oh, this is something that's in me that's triggering and that's coming to my feelings. I'll just, suppose feelings of being unheard, unrespected, unloved, not of, my words aren't valuable or my whatever in the household. Okay. Notice that, work with that. That's going to take you into some deeper self-help, more than we have space to do with. But knowing that that's the inquiry that's going to lead you to roam and deep levels of healing. Step 2, which you can always do as well, is what is it that I really want at this time? And I encourage you to ask that beyond, man, I would love to come home to a clean household so after a long day of work, I don't have to wash the damn dishes from my kids, or, to yell at them and then we start the evening in conflict. No more, get off your phone or whatever, no more friends, you got to do your dishes before X or Y. We could do that. I'm not saying to do that. What I've come to, Eden, is, gosh, this valuable evening time with my kids, I'd love to be connected. I'd love to have a nice dinner with them. I want to ask them what they're doing. I mean, if by, God's grace, they actually ask me, how was your day, Dad? That would be great too. And we have a nice conversation. That's what I want.
Yeah.
I want to have a harmonious family.
Want connection.
I want connection. I want to be connected, not disconnected. And then I have to use the wise applications. I have to be the adult in the room. Simple, not easy. How would I like to deal with these dishes in a wise way in this situation?
As opposed to reacting, responding consciously as the wise parent.
Yeah. So again, this can apply to, 100 different things regarding our kid or our spouse situations. And then the answers are 360 degrees around the compass. It could be a number of things. I could do the dishes. I've heard that from my wife. I just do the dishes and, shut up about it. And they're teenagers. Let it go.
Yeah.
Okay, great. She's a middle school teacher. She, has incredible wisdom, like lifetimes of wisdom from teaching thousands and thousands of middle school kids over the decades. Okay, great. I'm hearing you. I'll just do the dishes and let it go. Because she's, what do we really want? We're going to let the dishes stop the whole train.
Oh, God, that's so right.
And there's options. Do the dishes and then bring it up after people are fed, not before. Bellies are full. Okay, great. Can we create some agreements? This would be step 3. How could we create some agreements so that we all get to cohabitate a household that's, livable? We can use the sink or, use the fry pan so it's not dirty at the start of the dinner time. And those are just conscious agreements that hopefully that our family members can buy into. So those are a few steps. 1, the U-turn. 2, think about what you really want. 3, speak about agreements, not expectations, but hey, kids, family, what can we agree can happen here? And if the dishes aren't done after a day or whatever it is, what would be, some good next steps?
And so this is really taking the willingness to look within ourselves, and it's also having the courage to communicate with our loved ones in a conscious way. So.
Yeah. Because we'll put the problem in air quotes, may not be the dishes. The larger problem may well be your reaction to the situation that creates a much larger problem.
These situations which make us feel unheard or rejected or unappreciated can then spiral within ourselves, where we create lots of stories in our mind, and then of course we can react to our loved ones who we care about in unconscious ways, and then it can become a downward spiral. And so, this U-turn is potentially a way to create an upward spiral of connection.
Yes.
With that second question, which is, what we all really want. We want to feel connected to ourselves and feel connected to our family.
Yeah.
So that's beautiful. I have a follow-up question. What about managing ourselves and regulating ourselves, like during the process, like breath work? Like there's certain breath works to call on the parasympathetic nervous system, as opposed to being in the fight or flight where we can't even think straight. That's one piece that I'd like to have you dialogue on. And then the second piece is, when do we excuse ourselves from the situation and maybe do some work that we need to do on ourselves that we maybe can't do in front of people, in front of our families?
This is where you call it the U-turn. We're looking out at the world. There's the dishes or there's whatever, my, family member saying and doing the things that they do that activate me. We do the U-turn and say, what is this bringing up in me? And then, yes, as part of it, we then have multiple steps of what we can do with that, okay? We can do light, deep, slow, long breathing, the type of we did to open this podcast here, that can be really helpful. Expand your gaze a little bit, soft focused gaze, notice peripheral gaze. When we get into fight or flight or we're activated, we feel like we're, completely, disrespected, unheard. We're engaging a threat response if the dishes are in the sink and I feel completely unrespected in my household, okay? Soften the gaze, engage the peripheral vision, light, slow, long breathing. Just a few breaths. I do this even while, rock climbing in different ways when I'm activated in nervous situations. So that can be helpful. And then it just allows us, again, to gather more raw data from our system so we can respond to it, and then we do the U-turn so that we can return to those that we're in relationship with in a better way.
What about IFS with this situation? Is there any self-talk that can happen with parts of ourselves around a situation like this?
So yes, so this U-turn does come from the IFS, wisdom tradition here and we can even do this. I do this often, we'll call it imaginally, with clients in my office, okay? Great, so bring up we'll call it your tormentor. Let's put them in an observation room. We're just sitting, me and the client in my therapy office. Ask them to come in and do and say the things that activate you most. And so what we're trying to do is stir up the nervous system so we can work with it. To do parts work, let's just say anger comes up. I see the damn dishes on the table and the sink, blocking, can't cook dinner without washing all my kids' dishes, whatever it is. Okay, anger's here. Great. Can work with anger, wave to it. Oh, hello, anger's here. There might even be some part of me that's afraid of my anger. I get angry at the kids and it doesn't go well. And then my wife's upset at me, and then we're not in harmony there. So another part of me is recognizing already, there's another wise part that's come forward that's recognizing that anger doesn't always do such a great job of, running the household. Okay? And then, lo and behold, there's my witness of these two parts. Just the fact that I'm able to recognize that I have anger and I have a part of me that says, "Whoa, Tyler, you've gotten angry before and it doesn't go well, and kids don't like it, wife doesn't like it." Okay, well, who's witnessing that? Oh, so that's a third entity that's already there in the most basic of examples. And then, if you want to go deeper, what is the anger protecting? And I'll just, give you the answer quickly. It's always protecting a vulnerability. We feel vulnerable, just like a cornered cat or whatever it is. It's going to come out and lash out in anger, swipe its paws at you, scratch you. Okay, it's because there's vulnerability there, perceived threat. So, yeah.
And so, just to take it just a little bit further,
yeah,
then there's the potential to bring that witness to that vulnerability.
Yes.
And bring light and love and friendliness and compassion and holding to that vulnerability.
Yeah, so the couples therapist, Terry Reel, has a very good exercise. He directs this toward men, male anger. It can apply, obviously, equally to men or women. Just to help his male clients touch in. Okay, rather than being like, God, I'm really angry right now, okay? Shift the language to say, I'm feeling vulnerable. And this may bring up a lot of resistance in clients, but oh, right, okay, there's anger, but the anger is here because there's something deeper that I'm feeling vulnerable.
And so how can we work with our vulnerability? Because this is, in my life, I've got what I call a protector that often comes to protect me and this vulnerable place. So how could you support me in connecting and processing and being with that vulnerability?
So one of the fascinating things that that we do in therapy in this IFS tradition and others is to bring our witness consciousness forward, which you can call it, loving awareness, or just, awareness, as I mentioned. Oh, who's aware of the anger? Okay, great. Well, that's my witness. And for whatever wild reason, this loving awareness, which is, again, it's a part of every single wisdom tradition that I've studied. I've done some very deep studies of the interfaith, spirituality. lo and behold, there is a loving witness consciousness that can quite like literally reattach or reparent our, wounded inner children. And that's generally the one that's feeling vulnerable, unheard, disrespected. I don't matter when I come home and I see dishes in the sink for the second day in a row. So that's what we do in therapy. And that's, simple, not easy. It's where we're going, but it can take many layers to access that vulnerability of, we ring the tuning fork of the anger and the vulnerability that's there from seeing dishes in the sink and go back, what is the root of when you felt that your voice didn't matter, or you just had to, shut up and, take it or whatever. People didn't care about your wishes in the world. And now these inert porcelain dishes sitting on the sink now remind you subconsciously of being unheard, of that you don't really matter. Yeah. Wow, that's what we heal. What if we could heal the part of you who feels like he or she doesn't really matter? Would you be interested in that? That is the question that I ask my clients. And generally, I'm trying to engage the protector, the anger, to say, yeah, I'd like that.
And I know in my own process, because I work with myself in this way, is that sometimes I need to just go lay down on my bed or sit in a comfortable chair and see where that energy is resonating in my body and bring that loving awareness, that witness consciousness to that energy packet in the nervous system, and simply hold space, loving space for that packet to do what it needs to do, not try to control it, but just to bring love and presence to where that experience of feeling unloved or rejected or whatever it is presenting itself in my body.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So I want to suggest it's not like this is, okay, you just be aware of what's there and then you heal it and you work with it right in the moment. No, we can engage really healthy dissociation, go for a walk, go for a drive, go for a swim, or, take a hot shower, a cold shower. It's not always that we have the capability to deal with our vulnerability in the moment. So we want to engage healthy ways or speak to our loved one and say, I just need some space right now. Like, I really want to address this. I'm committed to working with this. May I have, can I have some space to do this? Or I see the dishes in the sink. I don't know. I'll go step out of the house, call my wife and vent. I can't believe it. We've told them 3 times, the dishes are still there. Venting helps a bit, step out of the house. Okay. I'm doing this in a process to figure out how can I create wise action going forward. Go for a walk. Yeah.
So what are some good references for IFS work?
Psychologist Dr. Tori Olds has wonderful YouTube videos, 5-part, 7-part videos on internal family systems, how it works, why it works. She also, going back to our memory reconsolidation topic on trauma therapy, has some great informational short YouTube videos on memory reconsolidation and the neuroscience of that. For couples, I love the book Bring Yourself to Love by the IFS couples therapist, Mona Barbera. Wonderful book. And then I would say the audio book or the printed book, Greater Than the Sum of Our Parts by Dr. Richard Schwartz, is a wonderful intro to IFS.
Beautiful. And now maybe a final experience that you can share that you've shared with me and I'd like to know more about is that as your kids have gotten older and you have more time and your love for the outdoors and climbing and how important that is to you, you've begun to climb with your wife. And can you tell us how that has impacted you?
Yeah, absolutely. So Megan and I we met, I think, at age 18 and started dating at 19, and we dated for 6 years before we got married. So we've been together a long time, 31 years now.
Congratulations. That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's been a wild journey. You've learned a lot through it, obviously deep humility, learning all from our different errors, throughout the way. And, I have just deep humility about this because I know that 2 good people can grow apart. And so I'm not here to say that I have any wisdom in how to, co-create a great marriage or relationship, because I know that for our own sake, it could have or may well still go in different paths, and that's okay. But for whatever reason, in part, small part, perhaps due to our self-help work and couples work together, we're having a lot of joy together. And we've really enjoyed going out rock climbing every weekend together. Now that our kids, don't really need us around much or don't want to be around us, turns out. Hey, you want to spend Saturday with Dad? And the answer is generally in some phrase, no. So yeah, we're having a lot of fun climbing together. Megan and I, did a lot of climbing when we were younger too, but during the child rearing years, it's easier to sometimes take our different, days off or weekend time. So it's been a lot of fun. She's going to take a sabbatical year, most likely, from teaching. She's been teaching for some decades in the public schools here in our area. Travel around country. I'll join her for a fair bit of that next year, and also continue my counseling practice.
Beautiful. And then one final thing that I want to touch on with you is you have a deep love for hunting and being in nature. What does nature do for you? It's such an important thing, and we're living in a time where so many people are inside, or they're in cities, or just feeling that subconscious disconnection from source.
Yes.
And so what does nature mean to you, and how have you used it as a resource? Yeah. And you can talk about hunting as well, because I know that's been really an important, nourishing experience for you.
Right. So, yeah, even the evidence and the research is very clear that nature heals. It's wildly healing when we, just to be outside and off the phones. And so that's powerful. We're lucky to have a lot of public land here and outdoor space. But for me, the connection, again, to the outside world comes back to the root thing that we talked about at the beginning of spirituality, of, who am I? What am I doing here? I find in nature, I'm so connected to, what Thich Nhat Hanh might call the interbeing, that, as we breathe, I'm breathing, my feet are on the ground, I'm breathing in water vapor that's come from, rivers, from the clouds, from the trees, I'm breathing in oxygen that the trees have used through photosynthesis, sunlight, and carbon dioxide to create sugars and oxygen. So we're quite literally breathing in the trees, becoming their spirit, becoming their energy and their life source. And for me, having learned and trained into bow hunting particularly, has been fascinating. And I wouldn't necessarily have thought that hunting and killing an animal would necessarily have connected me so deeply, to source and to the infinite cycle, but it has. And I think just the act of, very kind of intimately, very closely observing animals, and shooting and killing one with a bow at close range, and the act, crying by it as it dies, butchering every part of it, cutting it apart, through all the blood and guts of it. And then, as I tell our kids, we will bless this meat and pray and thank the animal for taking its life. We take its life. It has eaten on the plants and animals of the mountains here, the Colorado Rocky Mountains, the Elk Mountains that we're a part of, has literally grazed. It is, quite literally of these mountains, and we take that into ourselves, and we become the elk. We become all the plants that it has ingested over its lifetime. And so we thank it for its life that we may live. And you can do the same thing. You don't need to kill an animal for that. Knowing what we know now, that consciousness is prior to matter. This is part of the 2022 Nobel Prize in Physics. Mm-hmm. That consciousness is actually the ground of life and of sentience.
Mm-hmm. The ground of being.
The ground of being. That there is just as much consciousness in a leaf of lettuce as there is in an elk. Again, I'm drawing some broad strokes here, but generally speaking, the consciousness is infinitely large, beyond our greatest imagination. It's in everything. And again, this comes back to what I was saying about our general Judeo-Christian, traditionally white European American culture, that thought that mankind and our thinking is the pinnacle of sentience. Turns out it's not. We're just a receiving channel of a much larger consciousness that the brightest minds in physics have now shown to us, in part. So my point being, is tying this back to hunting, is we can connect to this life cycle that we are a part of into ingesting plants animals, food. We are food bodies.
Yeah.
Without it, we have no sentience. So the food is feeding and keeping our sentience alive, that there can be deep spirituality and connection in that understanding.
Yeah, it's like the Native Americans, I wasn't there, and well, at least in this lifetime, and I can only share what I've heard, but like with the buffalo, for example, when they took a buffalo, they did so in a prayerful way, in a thankful way for what it provided to the community, and they used all of it, as opposed to this Western process which took all of the buffalo from the lands and would often just take the skins or the tongues or the tusks or from the animals and leave the rest to rot. And so I guess I want to share, piggybacking on what you've shared, is that anything can be a medicine or a poison. A person can eat a vegan meal very unconsciously, without prayer, without connection, without appreciation for where it came from and who provided it and all of that. Or a person can go on a hunt like a Native American and have deep reverence and gratitude for the connection of life, the oneness of life, the consciousness of life. And I guess it's to each his own in terms of how they want to operate, but I love what you're sharing about the reverence and the gratitude and the connection within which you go into nature and work this process.
Yeah, it's been fun. And I mean, the brass tacks of it are my life is more joyful and more full of gratitude, of interconnectedness, of connection to all things, and joy in my life when I look at life through that lens.
Yeah. I imagine that lens, like you've shared with the process of inquiry and asking the question, who am I? That lens for you continues to evolve as you do this inner work.
Oh gosh, yeah. I feel like I'm not sure I'm staying on any solid ground of knowing. It's just a deeper mystery and awe that's unfolding for me.
Beautiful. So Tyler, how can people get in touch with you and learn more about all the resources that you have and the work that you're doing?
So I'm a therapist in Carbondale, and my website is stablefordcounseling.com.
Can you spell it for the listeners?
Yeah, so Tyler Stableford is my name, and so Stableford Counseling is STABLEFORD counseling.com.
They can find what they need there.
Yes.
And then you mentioned a lot of beautiful, wise people that you've read from, and we'll include those in the show notes so that people can access those. So I want to thank you. This has been a very enlightening conversation with you, and I'm so grateful that we had the opportunity to connect.
Yeah, thank you for your great questions, Eden. Thanks for your interest in chatting, and thank you also for your deep connections that you've brought in my life. I've been to many sweat lodges and other, meditation and just spiritual knowledge events. And so thank you for being a guiding light and opening so many doors for me and opening to the mystery for me.
Thank you. I love looking into your eyes and you looking into my eyes. It's a blessing. Thank you so much.
Likewise. Thank you.
Take care. Thank you for joining me on Connection is the Medicine. This podcast is sponsored by the Connection is the Medicine Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to co-creating connection to self, community, nature, and spirit. I hope this conversation inspires you to connect with deeper meaning and purpose in your life. To learn more about our offerings at True Nature in Carbondale, Colorado, and Loma Sagrada in Nosara, Costa Rica, please visit connectionisthemedicine.com. Blessings on your day, and I look forward to visiting with you again soon.